Welcome to Pathways to Partnership, the podcast powered by MoveAmerica. Here, we explore the intersection of industry, government, and academia, where collaboration sparks innovation and strengthens our nation's defense industrial base. Each episode will bring you thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and real-world success stories that showcase the pathways to building a stronger, more innovative defense industry. And now, here's your host, Rick from MoveAmerica.
Welcome to Pathways to Partnership, the podcast where we explore the critical issues affecting government suppliers and innovators. Today, we're joined by Dr. Christophe McCray of MoveAmerica. We're going to dive deep into the topic of FOCI, foreign ownership, control, or influence, and what businesses need to know. Christophe, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to folks because you have been with MoveAmerica for a few years in a couple of different roles. So I want people to really understand the background of who you are within the organization so they understand where you're coming from with what we're talking about today.
Okay. I am a recovering physicist. I worked in laser technology for 4 or 5 years before I decided to move into the think space. Worked at the Institute for Defense Analysis. We do a lot of work for the Pentagon, looking at difficult gray problems for them. Did that for about 12, 13 years before I moved to MoveAmerica. I've been at MoveAmerica. Next March will be 5 years. Yay. And I have been working on a few things, but the one thing that I did start to focus on, I was directed to, was working on FOCI, foreign ownership, control, or influence. And we worked that with the Office of Small Business Programs and the Air Force and Office of Financial Economic Analysis. I believe that's what it is. And that was a really good effort. We finished in November of 2024. And that is my extent right now.
And really with that, so you produced, because I can remember we published a white paper about FOCI that we put out on the MoveAmerica website. And then you recently produced a deeper dive study, would be the proper term?
So during our work with OSBP, I wrote a white paper, just a way of just gathering our thoughts and just saying, hey, this is what we understand. This is where we're going with this. We did do a deeper dive with the Air Force. We wanted to look at well, first of all, we wanted to look at FOCI from a very broad perspective, but the reason why we were doing that is because the Office of Small Business Programs would like to work with small businesses and businesses that have not worked with the government for a long time or have never worked with them. And they have this issue of, how do we do that? What issues are we going to have to deal with? When we started this, we started looking at, we started getting involved with DOD, other agencies within DOD who were experiencing the Consider Extension Act of 2022, where because of a great deal of actions that have been taken by foreign adversaries over as far as stealing our intellectual capital, our intellectual property, the DOD, Congress said to DOD, basically the federal government, we're going to reauthorize the small business, the Consider Extension Act, but you guys are going to have to do greater due diligence. And you're going to have to look at who you're bringing in. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to work with small businesses, and before they had to go through that entire process, we wanted to work with them, get them ready. And so that's what we've been doing.
And a lot of people think that FOCI has really just become a buzzword, but it really isn't. It's really a major threat to our industrial base because, like you said, it has happened where adversarial states have come along and stolen intellectual property, but they do it in a very sneaky, and it's certainly not ethical, but it's probably legal because it's probably somewhere in the contract documents. They do it in that roundabout legal way where they're coming in and you're signing a bunch of papers so that you could get capital or so that you could get guidance. And without really realizing it, you're signing away the rights to your intellectual property. Is that what's been happening?
So FOCI has been going on for decades. We could probably go back. I'm sure if somebody really did looked at it, I'm sure they could say, hey, since the early 90s, I'm sure they could go back to the 90s and see where intellectual property has been legally or illegally been taken from the United States. The issue is that it has just become so pronounced that when studies have been done, we've seen that hundreds of billions of dollars are being taken from the United States. And so something has to be done. But you're absolutely right. Small businesses, for the most part, are being greatly affected by this. They don't have the capabilities, they don't have the legal infrastructure to really handle this. A lot of them are just looking just to survive. If you are just starting out, sometimes it takes a great deal just to make it. And so they will they will accept a lot of foreign funding. And sometimes this funding comes with a lot of strings. And some of them could be reasonable, but I want a seat at your board. You will sell these many products, but you will sell it only to us. Or we will buy shares of your company. So some of these requests are legitimate. And then some of them give them insight into how your company works. It also gives them insight into your intellectual capital, your people, and it gives them insight into what you're doing. And that creates a problem, especially if it's coming from a country that we are concerned with, a foreign country of concern, somebody that the State Department has designated as this is a nation that, even though they're investing in our country, we actually have serious problems with. And the reason why is because and there's case after case, as you alluded to, of technology that has been developed here that has somehow found its way in one way or another to those other countries. And so, yeah, small businesses need to really think about who they're bringing on, what their relationships are with them, because they could wake up and find themselves in a situation where their intellectual capital, their intellectual property is suddenly being used in another country, thereby completely undermining any kind of capabilities that they were going to be able to offer.
And when it comes to those particular countries, obviously China and Iran top the list. Are there others that are of particular concern to whether it's the Defense Department or just the federal government as a whole?
Yeah, there's Russia, there's Cuba, but the best thing, if a business is starting out and they want to know who are these countries of concern, the State Department really lays that out. The State Department decides who are the countries of concern and who are not. So you can go to the State Department and you can probably find that information on their website.
Excellent. And then you get a lot of questions from business owners because a lot of times, like you said, they don't have the infrastructure. They're simply trying to survive. They're looking to get into federal contracting because it is a way for them not just to grow their business, but sometimes for their business to continue operations. And so they look into federal contracting. And for a lot of businesses, it can be very lucrative because if you have something that the government needs, the government is going to be willing to procure that from you. But they hear the term FOCI, and it really does make them nervous because they don't have a legal team on board. They don't have an advisory team on board that can sit there and say, this is what FOCI is and this is what FOCI isn't. I can remember last year we were at the Mentor Protege Summit, and we had business owners coming over to us and asking questions about FOCI. One of them was, I employ an offshoring company, and they will sometimes help with customer service where they're making phone calls. They sometimes help with accounting. I'm not really sure where the person is located that is doing that work for me through this offshoring company. Is something like that considered FOCI?
Yes, absolutely. You want to be transparency is extremely important. You need to know who is working. First of all, you need to know who's working for you, what their nationality is, and where they're located. If you're routing something through a country of concern, then you need to be transparent about that. S, I- SF 328 is a great way to start if you want to start doing business. If you want to look at records, you can go to CFIUS. They have records. CFIUS puts out reports all the time. You can go to the Office of Foreign Asset Control. You can do a lot of different things to peel back that onion and find out whether you should be concerned or not. But the first thing I would do is I would really look at the State Department, find out who's working for you, where they're located, and then just cross-reference it with the State Department. If it's a country of concern, then you really should be concerned and take notice of that. But even if you don't, I would still look at the SF 328. And that's just a simple form that asks you some basic questions about your company, who's invested, where they're located, things like that.
And it really is about educating yourself. For any business owner, you have to know what you're getting into before you get into anything. It happens with any type of business relationship. Earl Wyatt, our executive director, had a really great line recently where he said, don't focus on who they claim to be, focus on who they really are. And I'm paraphrasing him, of course, but that really is it. It's about education. And if there is something that you believe could be of concern, it's simply a matter of dealing with it. If you deal with an offshoring company that is utilizing people that could be from countries of concern, find a different offshoring company. You need to know, you need to peel back the layers. You need to peel back the onion. Sometimes it's going to make you cry, and other times it's going to make what you're cooking better.
Transparency is extremely important when you work abroad. You have to know your business. You have to know your business, especially if you're going to work internationally. You have to know your business if people are giving you money. There's a lot of venture capital firms out there right now. And there are a lot behind these venture capital firms. There could be other capital. There could be other capital. And some of that capital could be from foreign countries. Some of that capital from the foreign countries could be from countries of concern. It is your responsibility. If you can't find that out, you can always seek help. There are forms, there are things that you can look at, but you have to do your due diligence. That's the name of the game.
And then you also get the people who have the concerns that I think go a little too far.
Mm.
If you are dealing with a supplier or you are dealing with somebody who's in an advisory position to your company, a legal position, a finance position, and they're located in a country that is a US ally, that's not necessarily FOCI. That's not necessarily going to disqualify you from a federal contract.
No, you're absolutely right. No, certain countries have we have different relationships with different countries. If you are considered a close U.S. ally, then the FOCI risk is low. You still should release that because there might be something, an issue with where they are. But for the most part, the FOCI risk is very low. And you shouldn't go with the idea that, okay, if they are not a U.S. citizen, if they are not in this territory, then I can't do business with them. You're right. That's an overreach. If they are a close U.S. ally, then the risk is very low, but you still should continue. You should still report it. You should still say, hey, this is where it is. This is the information, because transparency is really going to be your friend in these kinds of situations.
And particularly when it comes to FOCI, especially when it comes to FOCI, we want to stress to people that the old adage, the old idiom of it is better to ask for or to seek forgiveness than to ask permission does not apply here.
Yeah. I was wondering where you were going with that. But
I mean, it really is. This is not something that you want disclosed right before the contract gets awarded. This is something you want handled in the very beginning.
Right. You will lose contracts. You could be set up as this person is involved with a company that has a history of taking intellectual property, tradecraft from the United States. We will not deal with them.
And then I want to jump back just a little bit because, again, a lot of people think that FOCI really only has to deal with funding, really only has to deal with financing, but it's more than that. FOCI touches every part of what could be a business's manufacturing process.
Oh, yeah. It could touch your supply chain. It could touch the people that work for you. And there's so many different levels to it. It's not just the ownership as you were talking about, or the control, but the influence. If you have a product that the only people that really seem to be buying it are, and just use them because they're the big punching bag right now, are the Chinese. And the Chinese make extreme demands on you that you have to manufacture there. You have to do these things. You are opening yourself up more and more to them, and they can basically control and influence how you make your decisions. And by doing that, they can probably discern what you're doing. There's also the influence. I think every person who has ever done research has looked forward to going to conferences to show what they have learned. The reason why we do that is because that is how technology, that is how science grows, is by the exchanging of ideas. However, the problem is that sometimes you might meet somebody who the only reason they're not there, they might be there to exchange ideas, but their main reason there is to basically acquire information so that they can build up their work. There's always an issue. There's always these issues that with FOCI, and one thing I always tell people is we have all these things that you should protect yourself from. Does that mean you're not going to be a victim? No, because it's consistently changing. It's always changing. These tactics are always changing because we are always trying to adjust to them. There is a case where I'm still trying to figure out how it happened, where a NASA engineer developed a new air breathing platform that would go faster than Mach 5. Because of the technical issues and the cost, NASA decided to put it on the shelf. Years later, or sometime after that, a research university in China somehow was able to acquire this information, and they developed that. They developed it into an air breathing platform that did go into a hypersonic platform, and they now have a hypersonic weapon. Nobody really knows how, or at least they haven't put it out there about how it happened. But this is where we don't you don't know how FOCI can affect you. And FOCI isn't just about finances and ownership. There are so many other different parts to it. So you're absolutely right.
And it's all about protecting your intellectual property. Again, if you're an innovator, you have something that you believe is going to take things forward, is going to revolutionize, is going to make something better, whether it's a device, whether it's a process, whether it's an algorithm, no matter what it is. This isn't something that you just want to go and share with everybody. You want to keep that as close to the vest as possible, as the old saying goes. And so that's really what you need to do, is you need to look to protect yourself, because it's not just about losing contracts. It's about reputation. It's about protecting your interests and making sure that your intellectual property doesn't end up developed by somebody else. And then I've also heard that there have been examples where intellectual property is stolen so that it can be developed, but developed improperly, to try to discredit something that the originator was trying to do. Have you heard of that?
I haven't actually heard of that, but that does make sense. If I'm trying to discredit somebody, I'm going to take what they've done and I'm going to properly develop it in my way, but I'm going to maybe put out there that we tried to do it their way. We tried to do it, but we have what they're saying is not necessarily true, or we could not reproduce it. It throws a little bit of doubt. And so then when they come out with something, they can say, hey, we did it this way, and this is a better way of doing it. This is our product. Therefore, we're going to claim the patent. We're going to claim the intellectual property.
It really does go back to almost the old stories of industrial espionage, where somebody's trying to get the secret formula for Kentucky Fried Chicken's herbs and spices.
And nobody has ever found that out.
That makes absolutely no sense to me. With all of the technology that we have available today, we have mass spectrometers. We can't just drop a bit of that batter in there and say, here's exactly what's in it.
It's Kentucky Fried Chicken and Coca-Cola. You could say, be like them. No, I don't think anybody has ever figured out the recipe for Coca-Cola. I could be wrong, but I heard that is a very well-guarded secret.
So to wrap up, transparency and awareness are the first lines of defense, because FOCI may seem like alphabet soup, but it's a serious issue with real consequences and real solutions. Thanks for listening to Pathways to Partnership. Stay informed and stay secure.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal, financial, or professional advice. The views expressed by the host and guests are their own and do not necessarily represent the views or positions of MoveAmerica or its affiliates. Always consult with a qualified professional for advice specific to your circumstances. For more information about MoveAmerica and our mission to strengthen the defense industrial base through innovation and collaboration, visit us at www.moveamerica.org. Thank you for tuning in to Pathways to Partnership, powered by MoveAmerica. Until next time, stay inspired, stay innovative, and we'll speak with you soon.